I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Syria. Dealing with the devil when spies play politics. Two different sources this week told a very unusual, indeed dramatic story. That Western intelligence services, particularly from European countries, have been in contact with members of the Assad regime. That those discussions have specifically looked at the issue of foreign fighters, how they can be monitored, how they can be controlled, so they don't only wreak havoc in Syria, but wreak havoc when they return to their home countries. The story came out through one channel via the Assad regime itself. Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Mikdad told the BBC that the discussions had been ongoing for quite some time, although he wouldn't say which specific intelligence services were involved. Thousands of miles away, the story also came out in the United States, when the Wall Street Journal, citing unnamed Western and Middle Eastern sources, said that yes, indeed, intelligence services, again from European countries, not from the United States, had been in discussions with the Assad regime about specific cases of jihadists who were seen as a threat, part of an ongoing counter-terrorism effort in the region that goes back years, well before the start of the Syrian conflict in 2011. There was one key difference between the two stories, however. In the Wall Street Journal account, the sources made it quite clear that there were no political negotiations that took place. No discussions, for example, about the Assad regime's staying in power, about supporting it against the insurgency, about the Geneva II peace conference, which is forthcoming. The deputy foreign minister in Damascus, however, told a far different story. Yes, he said, there had been discussions which went beyond the specific counterterrorism question on political matters, although he wouldn't say what the details of those were. Well, we can play a little bit of who's right here, but in fact, there's a different way which brings the two stories together. And that is what happens when you deal with the devil. Here's a bit of essential background. Soon after 9/11, the United States began rounding up suspects. It took some of those suspects to Guantanamo Bay, for example, in Cuba. We know all the stories about them. But some of those suspects were spirited away on planes to black locations, different countries who would carry out the interrogation and, let's be honest, torture. One of those countries was Syria, where there were a number of nationals from different countries who were kept, detained, beaten, until information was extracted from them, or at least until they could be neutralized as a threat. Now, for that rendition program to be carried out, American intelligence services had to be in contact with Syrian intelligence services. In other words, there is a link which has continued for several years. And it is that link which quite possibly has been renewed in recent weeks. Because, of course, if you're talking about the war after 9/11, the war on terror, the Syrians can say, well, we have our own war on terror right now, involving people from Europe, from North America, as well as from other Middle Eastern countries. Given that background, you might say that what's happening right now is dealing with the devil. Fine. The fact is, you're still dealing. In other words, the devil, to some degree, is acceptable. And that's where this intelligence story takes on the political dimension. Even if no specific political agreements were discussed, even if there was no consideration of negotiations over the future of President Assad, in effect, these Western operatives had recognized Damascus. The very fact that these discussions are taking place is to some degree a political recognition of President Assad. Those discussions will continue because of the increasing U.S. concern, European concern with jihadists. That means that spies, spooks, whatever you want to call them, are playing politics. The Syrians know this. That's why they've been so keen to take propaganda advantage, trumpeting to the world that they have had the Westerners coming to them and asking for help, not the other way around. Now, in the United States, it may be a different story. Some people may have told the Wall Street Journal about the discussions because, yeah, they would quietly like these to be supported. Others may have leaked the story because they're not quite so happy about this backdoor working relationship with the Syrian regime. Whatever the motives, the simple fact remains this. When you deal with the devil, you accept that he gets to continue running hell. I'm Scott Lucas, and this is today's EA Worldview on Syria.